Now, all federal office buildings in Washington, D.C. Are being evacuated as we speak to you now. There are a variety of reports, and it's important to try and put this in some kind of order, but the most important things to tell you if you're just joined in is that what has all the makings of an extraordinarily well-planned terrorist attack on both Washington and New York has taken place this morning. The trade centers here in New York, the two World Trade Center towers have collapsed after being hit by a plane. Maria Hinojosa joins us on the phone. She is in New York, down near the building. Maria, what can you tell us?
Well, I'm actually at St. Vincent's Hospital right now, where at about 40 to 45 minutes after the first explosion, they started seeing patients here. What I'm hearing, and I have not been in the ER yet, is that they have at least 100 patients or more, that several of those people were dealing with issues of smoke inhalation, many of them throwing up, that there were several people who went directly to the operating room who are in very critical condition. Outside the hospital, people are coming in trying to help, to donate blood. Essentially, everybody here at this hospital is in a state of shock. I mean, I walked into the testing area, and the women here who usually just draw blood are also extraordinarily moved and shocked. They're moving in and out of the emergency room to try to help as many people as possible. Now, outside a block, about a block away from here, where you really had a bird's eye view of the two twin towers, which are the landmarks of New York City, the people stopped, the entire traffic has stopped. People have poured out of buildings and were watching, in fact, as one of the towers collapsed. And then you're really seeing a lot of people trying to move north, away from any place downtown near the World Trade Center area. People are just walking. The subways are stopped entirely all around the area of the World Trade Center. You can't get below 14th Street, and there just feels to be like a massive exodus of people walking north to get away from the area as far away as they possibly can.
Maria, I know Kitty Pilgrim is with you as well.
Right, I'm right
Kitty,
here.
tell us what you've been able to report on.
I'm actually reporting from Kennedy Airport at the United Terminal, and I was here this morning flying out. When they made an announcement at about 20 of 10 that all flights were grounded, people thought it was just a normal course of airport business these days, and so there was not much of a reaction, and then the news started to trickle through. It was not an official announcement made over the intercom.
Kitty, let me interrupt for just a second. The Associated Press is reporting that federal officials fear that a second hijacked plane or another hijacked plane is headed towards the Pentagon, and I'm looking for the time on this. We will continue to check that out. Kitty, I apologize for interrupting. Why don't you continue? Did we lose her?
Everyone didn't react, but then the news came through. I have never seen Kennedy in this condition. I've been here many times. People are in absolute shock. No one's talking. They were just staring at each other with their arms dropped to their sides. A pin could drop in the United Terminal. There were a couple hundred people there, and no one was saying anything. After about 20 minutes, people rushed to the phones. You cannot phone out. There's no real access back to the city. People are trying to get back. They've unloaded the baggage from the planes. They've asked that everyone pick up their bag and take it out of the terminal and take it home. And they're asking everyone to please leave. People are just finding it difficult to leave. They are not officially evacuating Kennedy Airport at this point, at least at the United Terminal. The attendants have been asked to stay. And again, there's still several hundred people standing around not knowing what to do. No one's even speaking.
And again, for people, Kitty, thank you, not familiar with New York, Kennedy is the major airport handling international flights into the city. It is also an enormous complex of 7 or 8 or 9 terminals.
That's exactly right. And in fact, the baggage has been unloaded into a separate terminal from where I am, and they're asking people to walk over, pick up their bags, and take them out. It's virtually impossible to get from place to place at Kennedy, and of course, bridges and tunnels into Manhattan are inaccessible at this point. No one has anywhere to go.
Kitty, thank you, and we'll get back to you. Chris Plant at the Pentagon has more. He joins us on the phone. Chris, what can you tell us?
Hi, this is Chris Plant at the Pentagon.
Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Chris, we hear you. Go ahead.
All right. The area to the west of the Pentagon has been evacuated further back by law enforcement and military officials as they anticipate a second aircraft arriving at the Pentagon. It's been deemed to be threatening enough where I saw at least one F-16 fighter jet in the air over the Pentagon headed to the west where the plane was reportedly coming in from. Again, they're saying here that a second aircraft is expected to arrive at the Pentagon sometime soon. They take it seriously enough that they have scrambled at least one fighter jet that I saw, probably either from the D.C. Air National Guard or the Maryland Air National Guard, both of which fly F-16s. The west front of the building of the Pentagon along Route 27 has now partially collapsed. About a 60-foot section of the building laterally has collapsed the entire 5 stories. The building is obviously, the fire is traveling inward in the building toward the courtyard, and this wedge, as they call it, of the Pentagon, the westernmost wedge,
Chris,
which was just refurbished and was in fact reinforced for terrorist attack and for just this sort of thing. I know that there were a significant number of injuries. I'm unaware of any numbers on fatalities at this point. People here who came from the building are suggesting that surely there were fatalities, but no one could confirm any. I have spoken to a number of people that I know who pulled people out of rubble. There were severe injuries. There are a number of helicopters here evacuating injured people, and I am told by one senior military source that the plane in the side of the building has been tentatively identified as a Boeing 767, a full-sized airliner, Boeing 767. But that at this point they're waiting for the arrival of a possible second plane, which has been deemed to be a threat, and as I said, fighter jets have been scrambled to address that matter.
Chris, stay with us. That's extraordinary bit of information coming out of Washington now. Let me add to something that we said earlier. We have a report now that a large plane crashed this morning north of the Somerset County Airport, which is in western Pennsylvania, not too terribly far from Pittsburgh, about 80 miles or so. Boeing 767 jet, don't know whose airline it was, whose airplane it was, and we don't have any details beyond that which I have just given you. We don't know if this is somehow connected to what has gone on in New York and Washington, but we do know that another plane has crashed, this one about 80 miles south of Pittsburgh, or at least to the southeast of Pittsburgh. Rose Arce, one of our producers here in New York, joins us on the phone. Rose, what do you have that's new?
Yes, just a while ago, I think you saw that collapse of the top of the World Trade Center. Well, it looks like a large chunk of that debris has hit a building very close by, about 2 blocks away next to an elementary school, causing another explosion. So for the last few minutes, I've been watching people running from that direction. There was one man, I'm not child, but you saw on the street. I've seen several emergency service workers carrying other emergency service workers from the scene. There's a haze everywhere. It's very, very difficult to see, but there has been the whole area has been covered by soot and ash. I said it looks almost like snow. So as people are coming up the street running from the scene of this new explosion, you can see them slipping on the ash and literally having to drag each other up the street. There's an incredible amount of panic down here in downtown Manhattan as people are realizing that they really need to leave the area entirely after spending the last hour or so just watching this from afar.
Rose, stay with us. Terrific work. Let me throw another couple of pieces of information out as we continue to put this all together into a straight line if we can. The United Nations has been evacuated. The United Nations building on the east side of Manhattan has been evacuated. The city is in, this is election day, a primary election for mayor and city council races here in New York. That election has been postponed until further notice. Obviously, we are in the middle of an extraordinary catastrophe that started about 8:45 Eastern Time here in New York when one plane crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center. About a half an hour after that, as people were converging, as fire and police and rescue teams were converging on the scene, a second plane appeared to the west of the Trade Center buildings and slammed into the second tower. That's what you just saw. Fire shooting out the north and east side of the tower. Shortly after that, we began to get reports of events taking place in Washington. an explosion which first came to us as a fire at the Pentagon. Now there's a report of a second hijacked plane heading towards the Pentagon. It is believed that one of the planes, perhaps both, but one of them, we have been told, was an American Airlines 767 that hit one of the trade